Okay, so when A is 1, like I was saying, like this problem is, and there was no GCF and all that stuff, it's really easy to factor this. We just take, only way to get x squared is x times x, right? So we can always just go x times x. Now, we've talked about this. When the C is negative like this, one of them is going to be addition, one of them is going to be subtraction. When that C is positive, they're both whatever's in front of the B. So if this was plus 15, these would both be pluses because there's a plus in front of the 2. But this wasn't like that. It was a negative, so one's a plus and one's a minus. Now, I'm thinking of factors of the C. Factors of negative 15. That means what I multiply to get negative 15, add to get me the B value, which is positive 2 this time. So what two numbers work? Very good, Kenneth. 5 and negative 3. 5 times negative 3 equals negative 15, and 5 plus a negative 3 is a positive 2. So we've got a factor. Now, in the past, when we didn't have it equal to 0, when we were just doing factoring, we were done, right? Well, in this case, we got it equal to 0. So we got to go a little further. We've got to figure out what x equals. So think about this. If I have some number times another number, and the answer is 0, what must be true about one of those two numbers? If I multiply a number times another number and equals 0, one of these two numbers has to be what? 0. You guys understand that, right? One of these two have to be equal to 0 in order for that whole thing to equal 0, right? So that's it's called the zero product property. And that means I have to say x plus 5 equals 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. Now, most of you, once you get it factored, can tell me the two answers, okay? And that's fine if you can do that, all right? But this is showing the work. Now you just solve for x in both equations. Those are our two answers now. So basically, it's just the opposite of whatever was up there, right? So if I plug negative 5 in for x, that's a positive 25. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. 25 minus 10 is 15. Minus another 15 gives me 0. It works. I take 3 and square it, that's 9. And 2 times 3 is 6. 9 plus 6 is 15. Minus 15 is also 0. So they both work. There's two answers to each one of these problems. Every now and then, when you factor it, you might get an x plus 5 and an x plus 5, or an x minus 3 and an x minus 3. You know, they might be the same factors. So basically, there's one answer, but it works twice. Okay? So, factoring. Stuff we learned earlier this year. We still need to remember how to do to help us do what we're doing this week. And as we move through the year, we'll be factoring. You know, won't be the last time we'll see that stuff. Questions on that before I move to the second one? That one makes sense to you? Pretty easy, right? Okay, so what do I got to do first for this one? What's it got to be equal to? 0. So what do I do with the 12? Subtract it to the left side, right? On the minus 12. Get it on the left side with the x squared and the x. So I get 2x squared minus 5x minus 12. There were no like terms. Now I got 0. So then I look for a GCF. No. Difference of squares? No. Sum or difference of cubes? No. Special trinomial? No. Regular trinomial? Yes. But my A value is 2 this time. It's not 1. When it's 1, we just go right to our two factors. When it's 2, what do you guys remember what to do? Yeah, multiply 2 times negative 12. That gives us negative 24. So I look for factors of negative 24. that add up to -5 would they be, John? Use calculus, okay.
8 minus 2. 8 negative 2.
Well, you want -5, so you want the 8 to be the negative. Good job. All right? So -8 times a +3 gets the -24. And then when I go -8 to +3, that gives me the -5. Okay. So what we do is we rewrite this problem with 4 terms. The 2x squared and the -12 doesn't change. That middle, that -5x, we turn into that -8x plus 3x. So that's what changes. Okay? We've changed it to number 6 on our list of factoring, a grouping problem. So we just group the first 2 and the last 2. And then we look for the GCF. What's the greatest common factor in this first group? 2x, right? What's the GCF between these two? 3, right? So I divide 2x squared by the 2x, the GCF, and I get x. And -8x divided by 2x, I get -4. And 3x divided by 3, and -12 divided by 3. You notice that the x minus 4s are the same, right? That's what we want to happen, right? So the x minus 4 is one of my factors, and the 2x plus 3 is my other factor. So now we've got it factored, and then we set our factor is equal to 0 to finish it up. So one answer is 4, and the other answer, right? And it's okay to get a fraction or decimal. Don't have to be whole numbers all the time. So there's our 2 answers, -3/2 and +4. Using factoring to solve. And in your homework tonight, they're going to ask you to use a certain method when you look at the directions. For the first 2, you're going to use factoring to solve. Questions? Little review there, helping. You guys should remember how to do that. We've done a lot of that already this year. The next method, I call the square root method. Usually in this method, you don't see an x. You know, my a value is 3, my b value is 0 because there's no x there, and my c value is 12. So usually that's what happens. You see it look like this. So in this situation, you want to get the squared part, that x squared, by itself. You want to take all the other numbers to the other side of the equation. So how do I move the 12 over? Subtract the 12, right? We always move addition or subtraction first. It just works out better, easier. And this 3 is 3 times x squared, so how do I move it? Divide. Okay, get that 3 over there too. All you want is x squared. Nothing else with it. Okay, isolate the x squared. Now, what do we do to both sides to finish up? Square root it, right? So that's what we do, is we take the square root of both sides now. And what is the square root of x squared? X, yeah. The square root of something squared is itself, right? Now here's something that a lot of kids forget. You must use this symbol when you take the square root of both sides. There's two answers, the positive answer and the negative answer. Because when you square a negative, you still get a positive, right? Now, Mr. Myers, what is our answer?
Well, you can't pick the square root of a negative number.
So what did we do a few weeks ago?
The little,
No, that's not what we did.
so what is it, plus minus
Close.
2i?
Yeah, 2i. Remember the square root of negative 1? When we had a negative under the radical sign, we took the letter I out for that imaginary unit. So those are going to show up. Complex numbers are going to show up. Remember, this is what we learned when we did that. Look at one like that. Okay. So there's two answers there, positive 2i and negative 2i. And that'll happen once in a while. Okay. Questions? Okay, so again, we wanted to get the squared part alone on the left, everything else on the right. Right, Tasha? So, what do we do here, Tasha? Clicking on you right now. What do you think? What are we doing this first one? What did I say we should do first? Get the squared part alone. Okay, is the squared part alone right now? If it's in parentheses, we're going to say yes. Okay, so that part's already done. The squared part's alone. So all I have to do is what, Tasha? Is the squared part's alone? What did we do on the one above? Once we got it alone, we square rooted it, right? What did we say the square root of something squared was? Itself, right? So what's the square root of x plus 1 squared? X plus 1. Chris, what's on this side? Close. What symbol?
I.
No.
Oh, no, plus or minus.
Yes. Don't forget, the 7 was right, but we need the plus or minus symbol. Okay? You guys are awesome. So, Nick, what's the answer?
X equals plus minus.
No, close. Because what did you do with that one? You subtracted it, right?
Yeah.
So here's how we usually write it. Now, if they're both whole numbers like this, you should do what Nick said. Negative 1 plus 6. I'm sorry, negative 1 plus 7 is 6. But there's another answer. Negative 1 minus 7. What's the other answer? Negative 8. So, if that's a radical 7, then it's just negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. But since they're both nice whole numbers, we go ahead and finish and get the two actual numbers. Okay? So, it's not plus or minus 6. It's actually 6 and negative 8. Questions? So sometimes it'll look like this. The squared part's already alone, so you can go right ahead and square root both sides and finish it up. Right, Brendan?
Yeah.
Questions? See, some of you had some school spirit today. Ashton's close. He's kind of monochrome. Carter. about you, Cody? No? AJ, he's kind of monochrome.
Yeah, please, Monica.
Gotta be little spirit football players.
No.
No?
I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I was late to school today, so I just.
You were late to school, huh? Liam,
What is it?
well, there's just different days to dress different this week. What's tomorrow? Is it trending day tomorrow? So what do we mean by trending? If I got this right.
Yeah.
Somebody who you follow maybe or something? Like me? Walls, I thought it was me.
Trending.
Really?
You just.
All right, so that's two of them, right? What was the first way? Factoring, and the second way? Square root. All right, third way. Come on, next page, there it is. Complete the square. And what we do when we complete the square is we turn this trinomial so that when we factor it, it looks like this last one we did. We're gonna make them look like this, and then we're gonna finish it like this when we do completing the square. Okay, so we're gonna turn it into a special trinomial that we can factor as one parenthesis to the second part. Okay, so when we do this method, we want the A and the B part over here on the left. We want the C part over on the right. Okay? So right now we got the B part on the left. We got to get it, we got the B part on the right. We got to move the B part over to the left. So how do I move it over? Subtract. And since those aren't like terms, you just write x squared minus 2x. We're also going to add a blank to both sides. It's always adding the blank. Okay? Now, there's two things. Well, the first thing you got to make sure of, this is important. Do I have that situation? Yes. Okay. My A value has to be 1 to do this. That's the first. If it's a number 2 or bigger, then you take that number and you divide everything by that number. Like if that was a 3, what's 3 divided by 3? You just change it back to a 1. But you got to change everything. So then you would have put 2 over 3 and 6 over 3, you make it a 2. Okay? If that was a 3. Right? So you got to have a 1 there. Who remembers what goes in the blanks? It's always addition. Anybody from last year?
2 divided by 6.
Say that again?
2 divided by 6.
No. You're thinking of Mike.
6 divided by 2.
No.
2 divided by 6.
Thought anybody who had me last year would remember. Michael or Sydney. The rest of you didn't weren't stuck with me last year, were you? Yeah, you grubbers, remember? Kennedy, you remember? Haas? Really?
No.
But you have a memory like an elephant. Remembers everything.
You haven't met me then.
Yes, I am.
I remember.
Dan, do you remember?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Dynamite? TNT? No? Walls?
Do you remember?
Do I remember? No, that's what I'm asking you guys. I want you to know.
Oh, we're gonna be second.
Never all kind of.
Don't you square something?
Yes, we
Where
do.
the 6 divided by 2?
You're getting there, Michael. It's, it's the B divided by 2 squared is what it is. So, the B value divided by 2 squared. So, Liam, what goes in my blank for this problem?
-2.
Yeah, that's the B value.
Yeah.
Divided by 2 is what? And -1 squared is what? Yeah. That's what goes in there. It's always positive. Always plus blank. Because no matter what you get, when you divide the B value by 2, a positive or negative number, when you square it, you always get a positive. Okay? So, now that I have this trinomial, now that I have completed the square, I can factor it to look like that. Just add these numbers. Okay? We just made it one of those special trinomials. So this has always got to be a 1x squared, so the front of this is always just x. Use the sign of the b. So in this problem, minus. And then you take the square root of the number you just wrote down in the blank. What's the square root of 1? 1. If that's a 25, then this would be a 5. Okay? So then it looks like the one we just got done doing, right? What do I do to both sides? Square root it, right? Chris, what symbol do I got to remember? Very good, sir. All right, and remember the square root of something squared is what? Itself, so it's just x minus 1. And square root of 7, we can't reduce, we can't simplify, we can't do a factor tree or anything, so we just leave it. And then add the 1 over. So we've got x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 7. A lot of times our answers will look like that with radicals in them or an I. Sometimes it works out nice. Excuse me, but not usually it doesn't. So there's 2 answers there. 1 plus the square root of 7, and then 1 minus the square root of 7. Okay? That's completing the square. So what do you got to make sure of? Before you can do this? All right, the A must be 1. So what do I got to do with this one then? Carter? What do I got to do first?
I don't know.
What's the A value?
2x squared.
It's a 2, right. Just the number in front. We only worry about the x. So how do I turn that into a 1?
I don't know.
Just divide by 2. Whatever that number is. If it's not already a 1, divide everything by that number. Okay? So we can't complete the square unless we turn that into a 1. But you got to do all of them. Okay, Myers? Not just some of them, all of them. So I got 1x squared. This becomes 4x. And I need my plus blank. What do I got to do with that 1/2? It's got to go where? The other side. That's C value. So I'm kind of doing 2 things at once here. I'm taking that 1/2 over, so I'm going to add it. Remember, my blanks are always plus blank. Okay? Sydney, what goes in my blank? No, not 8 over 2 squared. What's the B? The 1 after I divided by 2. Yeah, so 4 over 2 squared. So what does that equal? Good. Thank you. So again, the b value, after we divide it by 2 to get it ready, the b value is 4. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. Okay. So take that b value, take half of it. Now, if the b value is odd, let's say it was a 5. All right, write it as a fraction. Put the 5 over 2. Just like I did the b over 2. And square the 5, which is what? 25, and square the 2, which is 4. So it'd be 25 fourths if it was a 5 there. If it's a 9, another odd number, just put 9 over 2. Then you square it. 9 squared 81, 2 squared 4. So if they give you an odd b value, you can still do it. Just write it as a fraction. Okay, put it over 2, square top and bottom. So, what does this factor into, Zach?
X plus would be 2.
Yeah. It's always x, it's always the square root of that. Whatever is in front of the b plus, in this case, and the square root of the number you just put in there. So we put a 4 in there, so the square root of 4 is a 2. And then this is, what is a half plus 4? 4.5, right? But usually we don't write it like that. Usually we don't write 4.5. How do we usually write that when we want a fraction? How do I make it a fraction? Regular, just one number over another.
2 times 4 plus 1.
Right, 2 times 4 plus 1, so it's 9 halves. Okay, not very good. Okay, so that's an improper fraction. We call this a mixed number. We don't usually write them as mixed numbers when we're doing this stuff. So what do I do to both sides now, Jamie? Square root both sides. So the left side is what, Jamie?
X plus b.
Yeah.
And then equals plus and minus 3 over 2.
The square root of 2, right? Can we leave it like that, that 3 over the square root of 2?
No, you have to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 2.
Right, we have to rationalize the denominator, which we've done already this year, right? So we just have to rationalize our denominator to make it look like it's supposed to. So what's the last step then? Subtract the 2. Remember, radical 2 times radical 2 is radical 4, which makes it a perfect square, so we can make it a 2. Then we got rid of that radical in the bottom. Okay, so those are the 3 types. Factoring, square root method, and completing the square method, which is doing something first and then it's back to the square root method. Okay, do you have any questions? All of these we did last year. I'll review. Okay. If you have no questions, here's your assignment. Good job. I went kind of slow. Make sure we're getting it, sinking in.